Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Veg Grower Podcast. My name's Richard and I want to encourage and inspire you to grow more of your own food in whatever space you have available. And I do this by showing exactly what's been going on in my own allotment, my own kitchen garden here in Littlehampton on the south coast of the United Kingdom. I've been growing my own for over 30 years, but I still learn something new every single day. Now, coming up this week in the Potting Shed, we've got a competition where you could win tickets to Gardener's World Spring Fair. I'm also reflecting a little on the hunger gap. With it being Easter weekend, happy Easter everyone, we have managed a full weekend, a full 4 days of gardening. The kitchen garden, we have had quite a few projects completed, but we start off this week down on the allotment. Well, we start this week off with an update from the allotment, and what with it being a bank holiday weekend, I have managed to spend 2 entire days down on the allotment, and I tell you what, I have loved every single minute of it. Now, one of the major jobs that really needed doing was cutting the grass, and you may recall last week I mentioned that my allotment lawnmower had stopped working. Well, I had taken that lawnmower home and stripped it down, but I couldn't find a loose wire or any reason why it wasn't working. So I'm going to have to look a bit further into it. It's not going to be such an easy fix. What I did instead was brought the lawnmower that I have in the kitchen garden down and cut the grass using that. I think this is what I'm going to have to do until I fix the old lawnmower. As you know, I'm a big fan of using Ryobi battery powered lawnmowers, but I do feel on the allotment they do take quite a bit of abuse, so it may be that lawnmower has just reached the end of its life. It's about 6 years old, which for cheap lawnmowers, and that one was a cheap lawnmower, I don't think is too bad. But we're not going to throw it away just yet. We will still see if we can repair it. Now, after cutting the grass, the next job was to plant the next round of potatoes. As you know, each week at the moment I am planting a different variety of potatoes. So far we've done our first earlies, which were Swift and Rocket. This week we have planted a variety called Nicola, which is a second early variety. I've grown it before. It's actually quite a popular type of potato, certainly one that I have thoroughly enjoyed. But that's taken up another half bed, which means we've now got 1.5 beds full of potatoes, with another 1.5 beds to go before we are done with that. Of course, I have mulched the beds with the compost from our compost bin, which is beautiful compost. This is out of one of my corrugated iron compost bins, which are large and they fill up really nicely. I've got to say, the amount of compost we got out of it, we've run out from that bin now. This is the 1 metre by 1 metre one, but the compost that came out of it is beautifully crumbly, looks great, and has mulched the soil really, really well. Now, this means it's just another reason why we've got to continue trying to produce as much compost as we possibly can. And now we've got one more compost bin empty. It's now all about filling up the compost bins. I am wondering about the other 1.5 beds where I'm going to get compost from to fill up those beds. I've got an idea. There is one compost bin left, but I'm not sure just yet how ready that compost bin is. That is going to be a surprise for next week. Now, with the grass cut and the potatoes planted, I turned my attention to the greenhouse, just making sure that was tidy. I had a large collection of plastic pots in there, which were just taking up space. I don't really need plastic pots here on the allotment. They're basically pots. When I've brought plants down, I've popped to one side and never took them back home. So what I've done is I've put them into a box and taken them back home. And you hear what I've been doing with plastic pots a little bit later on. But the greenhouse was then tidy, which means it's going to be time to start getting our tomatoes and cucumbers into there very, very soon. It's all go. Now, then my attention was outside in all my garden beds, and there's quite a few garden beds, as you know, that are all, they're in pretty good condition, but in a month's time, all these beds are going to want to be filled up completely. So I've started just making sure that they were all prepared. This just means going around, giving it a good hoe all the time that the beds are empty, hoeing it out, ensuring that no weeds remain. And then just adding a bit of slow release plant feed, grow more, bloodfish and bone, just making sure that there's plenty of nutrients in the soil ready for planting out our plants. Obviously things like our brassicas, we can start planting those out right now, which are going to go into my larger corrugated iron beds, which lends themselves quite nicely because of the fact that they are so much higher. We can put a net over them really easily to protect them from any hungry pigeons. And there is quite a few pigeons around. Now, one of the other major jobs that we've had to do this week is make sure that our soil has been watered. Now, this is pretty relevant. We've had some dry days. We do still get the odd shower, but I'm not sure it's quite enough. Of course, mulching does help keep the soil moist, but what we really want to do is just try and do our best to help keep the soil moist. So I've gone around just watering the beds where they can, particularly the potatoes, the onions and the garlic, which are all growing fantastic. So I haven't seen any potatoes emerge yet, but the garlic and onions are looking fantastic. But we've basically just made sure all these beds are watered, and we're going to look forward to seeing how we get on. The idea here is that, yes, we want to water them when we can, but we don't want it to be one of those jobs that takes after, which is why the mulches come into play, because that does reduce the amount of watering we need to do. Now, this is particularly relevant because I'm looking at my garlic right now, and the stems on that are absolutely amazing. They're growing really strong. They look like some of the best garlics I have ever grown. Obviously, we don't know what it's going to be like until we dig them out of the soil, but they are really looking fantastic. I am trying to keep my eye out for any leek rust, which is a common problem on our garlics here. I'm hoping, because we've got the straw mulch, and I don't know if this is going to work, it's just a theory at the moment, but I'm hoping with the straw mulch we're not going to get any leek rust, because the straw mulch is going to help reduce water splashing up onto the leeks. Fingers crossed it will make a bit of a difference. Now, added to that, my carrots and my parsnips that I sowed a couple of weeks ago that are behind my greenhouse. I've checked on those. They're not showing any signs of growth just yet, which isn't surprising. It's still a little bit early, but I did give them a rather good watering at the same time. Now, these are growing in concrete drain pipes, large concrete drain pipes, which are filled up with compost, and we've sowed the seeds on top of those. I've just given them a water. Well, I noticed with my parsnip seeds, some of the seeds were actually floating up. The water was possibly a little bit too vigorous for them. This is sometimes a bit of a problem when it comes to sowing seeds directly. When it water's too heavy, the seeds float. Eventually they will find themselves and anchor themselves down. I'm not overly worried because I did sow these parsnips quite thickly. So fingers crossed they will be okay, but it's something to bear in mind. As always, something to bear in mind. So, yeah, this is what we've been doing on the allotment. It's looking fantastic. The pear tree, the apple trees are all in flower. Garlic and onions are going great. The potatoes are in. The straw bales are sitting there ready for action. We're going to start conditioning those soon. But basically, the allotment is ready for action. I'm going to head on home now, and I will meet you back in the kitchen garden. But in the meantime, let's find out what's been going on in the Supporters Club this week. Well, it's that point of the podcast where I ask if you would be good enough to do me a favour, and that is quite simply leave a rate and review on your podcast provider. It literally only takes you a few seconds to do so, but it helps us out an awful lot. It gets the algorithms working for us. It means that we get found by more people who might also want to know more about how to grow their own food. Added to that, if you are also enjoying this podcast and you want to help support the work that we do, then please consider becoming a member of the Veg Grower Podcast Supporters Club. For just £5 a month, you get access to extra behind-the-scenes podcasts that give you more of an idea what's going on here at the Veg Grower Podcast HQ. But also once a month through the letterbox, you will receive our monthly seed pack. And that seed pack contains a collection of seeds that we have carefully chosen to be sown in that very month. And included with the seeds is also a copy of our mini newspaper. And that mini newspaper contains instructions on how to sow those seeds, as well as a few to-do lists, as well as the option to take notes of what you're doing throughout that month. It's a great little tool, one that I am very, very proud of, and it's one that I also use myself. Now, over this last week, we have been sending out April's seed pack, which includes another fantastic collection of seeds. We've got mustards in there, we've got peas, we've got butternut squash, we've got coriander, we have got courgettes, and we have got turnips. All those 6 different seeds are included in April's seed pack. Now, if that sounds like something you would want to get involved in, don't forget it also helps keep this podcast running, which is the most important part. Just go to theveggrowerpodcast.co.uk to find out more and sign up. We'd love to have you there. Right, back to the gardening. Well, I'm in the kitchen garden now, and just like the allotment, 2 days of this 4-day bank holiday weekend, Easter weekend, has been spent in the kitchen garden. Just going to take a seat here in my favourite bench. I've got to say, I feel really eager for the growing season. This 4-day weekend, just spent the entire time gardening, has really fired me up, and I feel like the garden particularly is at the point where I'm happy to keep continuing on through this year. Not I'm never happy, of course, but it just feels like I've got something achieved and that the garden is charged. Now, my first major job that I wanted to do this weekend was getting electric out in my potting shed. This is the new shed that I put up last year. And one of the things that I've wanted to do was have some electricity out there, just to power a few tools when I'm outside, but also to have some lights so that I can work in that shed when it is dark. You know, although we're getting lighter evenings now, it still is nice to have a good, powerful overhead light to see what we're doing when we need to do some potting on or something. So this weekend, I have managed to sort the power out in this shed. All I've got is, instead of running 240 volts straight from the house on the mains power like I had planned to do, which is why we took down the tree, what I've done instead is I've got this All Powers S2000 power pack. This is a 240 volt DC as well, 2000 watt power pack. It's a battery that stores electricity simply and supplies it in large quantities. I actually used this to power my chainsaw when we were cutting down the tree, so it's certainly capable of delivering high wattage. Now, I decided to use this because it just made more sense. We have this power pack sitting around. We do use it, but we probably don't use it enough. And it was going to be easier to use that rather than running a long cable from my house to power my shed. Now, I should say at this point, when it comes to electrics, I know what I'm doing. I'm certainly competent enough to do electric. So I didn't need to get in an electrician to do it, although it is advised, if you are doing anything with electrics, get an electrician in, at least to check it when you have finished. But I decided that this power pack was going to be a better option. It saves me running this cable, and we can charge it from a solar panel. So certainly a very good option for us. It gives us a bit more of a sustainable feel about it. But what I've done is I've actually put in an 18 watt LED overhead light, which I've plugged into a switch, and I've wired this all up using armoured cable. So everything in that shed is safe and it is strong. And it certainly feels all the better for it because Well, it's just so nice to be able to see what I'm doing. Not that I've not been able to see what I'm doing, but just adding some overhead light makes all the difference. Now, moving on from that, one of the other tasks that I've wanted to do this weekend was just in front of my other shed at the very top of the garden. I have a large collection of pots. Now, this is something you often hear me moan about. Pots, plastic pots, garden pots, they seem to breed, and we had a huge amount of them. Now, this area had become rather messy and it's been annoying me for a while. I hate mess. I can't seem to stop creating it, but I hate mess and I hate everything being disorganised. So what I had to do was get in there and give it a good tidy up. We've recently acquired a brand new dustbin for the front of our house. The council have supplied us with a dustbin as part of this new thing that's probably going on up and down the country, and you may well have found yourself supplied with a new bin. Well, I've kept our old bin and I'm using that to store my pots in as well, because that just makes sense. I did have to give this dustbin a good wash out first, which was pretty easy to do. I washed it out and I also used some Jay's fluid. I was sent a new jar of Jay's fluid last year. I haven't used it since I got it, but I decided to give it a try. The smell is back. That smell of Jay's fluid is back in there. And I've got to say, actually, it did a really good job. And the dustbin smelled lovely afterwards as well. So, all well and good with using Jay's fluid there. Anyway, cleaned out the bin and put all these plastic pots stacked in neatly back into this bin. And that's tidied up that area. What this meant is it gave me access to my 2-shelved cold frame. And this cold frame I brought last year. It was one of the last things I did before walking out of my job last year. A bit of a sentimental value going on there, a bit of a story going on there. Anyway, I now have access to that, and I decided I'm going to move that down to in front of my greenhouse next to my potting shed, which is what I've done. I've moved it there and I've started putting some of my young plants into that to start the hardening off procedure. I like to think of my seedling system as being like a production line, in that they start indoors and they gradually work themselves down the line through various iterations in the shed, in the cold frame, as they gradually get hardened off before they're ready to go out into the ground. We're not far off from getting them in the ground, to be honest, and I'm looking forward to getting them in the ground. But now the cold frame is in a better position, an easier position to access, should also mean that we can move on with that as well. Now in the greenhouse, of course, I have my autopot system in there, which is, if you haven't heard me talk about the autopots before, they're fantastic. They really, really are. They're basically pots with an integrated watering system. And these are fantastic. I swear by these. I use these a lot, especially in the greenhouse, because they just ensure that my plants are watered and fed all the time. As long as, of course, I keep the reservoirs full. Well, I decided to start planting those up with tomatoes, cucumbers, chilies, sweet peppers and strawberries. So that meant I got in there and I just had to give all the valves and everything a bit of a clean to make sure they were all working, which didn't take too long. Gave them all clean, they're all working okay, topped up the water reservoirs, added in some plant feed, and then what I've also done is planted out my plants in there, which basically means my greenhouse is now in action. It's starting to grow food. Now to get in there, of course, I did have to make a bit of space because I have my peach tree and my grape vine in there. So I've had to move those out, but at night they're going back in the greenhouse for the time being, particularly the peach tree, because we still a chance we could get peach leaf curl if it rains. So I'm being a bit cautious with that, but for now it's in and out. But most importantly, the greenhouse is in action, the cold frames are in action, the shed is in action, everything is going the way that we want it. We just need now to get food growing. Right, well, I'm going to head on into the potting shed where I will meet you in just a moment, but in the meantime, let's find out what's going on in the kitchen this week.
Chopping all the veggies, sizzle in the air. Chef's got with the magic, smells are everywhere.
This week's recipe is a Easter roast vegetable hash with Ryobi eggs. This was a great way of just using up some of those leftover vegetables from our Easter lunch. Now, obviously, many of us will think of Christmas when it comes to thinking of a hash and things like bubble and squeak. And this is actually a very similar thing. But for me, this is just a great way, it goes with my ethos of using what we have so that we have no waste. Absolutely delicious as well. And what's great is everything that we used, we had grown. Now, all we need to do is just take our leftover vegetables. We had carrots, parsnips, potatoes, leeks and cabbage. The only one we did include was sprouts. But whatever you have, just take those vegetables and chop them up into bite-sized pieces. We then place those in a warm pan with a little oil or butter. Add the vegetables and just let them go crisp and caramelise. And then we stir through a good handful of fresh vegetables. Again, I've used a mixture of parsley, chives, thyme, maybe even wild garlic if you have any available. And we just then made a couple of small wells in the pan and cracked in a couple of eggs and then covered over with a lid and just cooked until the eggs are set. And that was it. Absolutely delicious. We served this with some mustard on the side and it worked fantastic. It went down so well with my wife and I that we want to have it again. We want to have another roast dinner just to make this again. Really, really lovely. Go give it a try. You will find the recipe on the veggrowpodcast.co.uk. Now I am in the podding shed and I have been thinking about the hunger gap. Now the hunger gap for me is this awkward stretch where we find ourselves at the moment. This is when our winter stores, our vegetables that we stored over winter, they're starting to fade. They're starting to basically be all used up. And our fresh vegetables that we've sown this year, our new fresh vegetables, they haven't quite kicked in just yet. It's a really funny place to find ourselves as a grower. But, you know, when I look at my garden beds and I know pretty soon they're going to be full, they're going to be producing food in the future, but we just can't eat it just yet. Hence the term, the hunger gap. Now for me, the last of the leeks are looking a little bit apologetic and the kales are thinking about bolting. So we are getting pretty low on the fresh vegetables that we planted last year. And at the same time, our freezers are starting to empty and our potato stores and things like that are also starting to empty. At the same time, our greenhouse is being planted up. We've got trays of seedlings and trays of promise just waiting in the background, ready to get going. Now, it got me thinking about how we can soften the gap a little. We're not going to be able to eliminate it. Let's face it, it's not going to be possible that we can grow food all year round without the hunger gap. But it is part of the rhythm of the year. And we've got to prepare for it in a way that makes it feel less like a cliff edge and more like a gentle dip. Now for me, it all starts about what we're sowing and when we are sowing. I like to grow a lot of crops over winter. I often talk about our onions, our leeks, our garlic, all crops that we have overwintered. But we also do things like our winter salads, winter lettuce, our spinach. And these early sowings, they do need a bit of protection, granted, but they just help get us through the winter. But they also help make April feel less sparse as well. So all these crops that we have sown have made a big difference. Things like leeks. Now, last year I actually sowed some leeks in May, and those are the leeks that we are harvesting at the moment. So what I've done this year is sown leeks January, February, March and April and May in order to keep a supply of leeks going right throughout. It really does make a big difference. I like leeks. We go through quite a few leeks and they are a staple. And it's very much similar to carrots and cabbages, trying to sow those every month that we can sow them in order to have a few of these vegetables available right throughout this season. Then it comes into the new year, 2026, for example. We need to start early and undercover sow in some of our quick salad crops. The radishes, the spring onions, the salad leaves, these little things that can help just bridge that gap and wait for the big players to come along. It's that perfect moment that we can just get these things growing. And things like radishes take 6 weeks. So if we'd sown them 6 weeks ago undercover, we would be eating those now. Now, for me, radishes are a great example of something that we can sow little and often. Every week, I will sow radishes. And this just gives me a lovely supply of these delicious little balls once they start cropping. Every week, we get a few radishes in our kitchen and we'll use those throughout the week for various meals. Really, really simple things that we can do. Now, of course, you might be thinking to yourself, that's all well and good, but I didn't prepare for myself. What can I do now that I'm hungry? And I think there is a lot of people struggling at the moment. So this is where, for me, microgreens come into place. Now, I've spoken a lot about microgreens in the past because for me, they are a really good crop that we can grow quickly and we can grow them anywhere. I grow mine in these little plastic containers, like takeaway containers. Just put some kitchen roll on the bottom and sprinkle over a few seeds. These are old seeds generally, and it could be things like cabbages, pea shoots, a whole wide range of different seeds, coriander, basil. These are just going to be used. They're not going to feed the masses, but they're just going to be used to add a bit of spice, a bit of flavour, a bit of punch to a wide range of dishes, and that's what we use a lot of at this time of year. So if you are thinking, what can I do right now to give me some food quickly, I would start with the microgreens and then go for the fast crops, the salad crops, the spring onions, the radishes and the lettuce. Go give it a try and let me know how you get on. Now, things to look forward to. In a month's time, we've got Gardener's World Spring Fair, which is going on the 1st, the 2nd and the 3rd of May down at Bewley in the New Forest in the UK. I go to this every single year and I have a great time. Now, this year I've got a pair of tickets to give away. You have to be available on Sunday the 3rd to go to this show, and it is a great day out. You get to go around, you've got the plant stalls where you can rummage around and find the plants and find the products that you're looking out for. You can go and have a look at the show gardens and give you some inspiration, some ideas of what you want to do. Plus you can go and have a look at the cars, the kitchen garden, all included in that ticket. Now, if you want to be in with a chance to win, all you've got to do is send me an email, richard@thevegrowpodcast.co.uk, and tell me what is your favourite microgreen that you like to grow. Really, really easy. If you haven't got a favourite microgreen or you've never grown microgreens before, just say, never grown them before, I'd like to give it a try. Now, you have got 1 week to apply for this. So the last date for this competition is on the 13th of April. I want to hear from you by the 13th of April. Again, details on this on the veggiegroundpodcast.co.uk. Good luck if you want to win. Right, well, it is time to wrap up this podcast. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please do rate and review as mentioned earlier. Added to that, if you have enjoyed this podcast, you want to help support the work that we do, then please consider becoming a member of the Veg Ground Podcast Supporters Club. If you want to get in touch, my email address is richard@veggroundpodcast.co.uk, or you can visit the veggroundpodcast.co.uk, leave a comment or leave a voicemail. And finally, don't forget you can find me on social media. We will be back again next time, so until then, please take care.